Inflation is now sitting at 3.1%, but Stats Canada is warning that food and housing costs remain much higher, not to mention our utility rates. Let's talk about the gas and electricity. Now, to talk about the latest number from Stats Canada is Brian Lilley, political reporter and Sun columnist, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, how does the government agency explain the real difference between overall inflation versus the high cost of food and housing right now?
Food still going up at about 5.8% overall. Fresh vegetables going up 5%. But as you said, 3.1 is the overall inflation rate. Well, that's due to a wild swing in the price of gas. It's part of what drove inflation back up last month. It's why it's down this month. Gas went down again. It has, been wildly fluctuating. I'm filling up for a $1.42 a liter, which we haven't seen in quite a while in this neck of the woods. So you're likely getting even cheaper than that out in Lethbridge. But, that's the wild volatility of gasoline. Now, they do warn, though, that mortgage costs, rent costs, and food continue to rise. They're much higher than the average rate of inflation. So even 3.1%, that's not good. It should be lower than that overall. But when you're talking mortgage rates, I believe last report, they were up more than 30%. Rental rates in some parts of the country going up almost 15% year over year. That becomes untenable for a lot of people. And, we keep hearing about the increase in the cost of food. That's part of the whole debate around Bill C-234, the campaign that Pierre Poilievre has started to remove the remaining bits of the carbon tax from farm inputs. So, the government shouldn't be doing a victory lap right now. Last time inflation went down like this, Chrystia Freeland said, oh, look, see, our policies are working. No, it was just the price of gas going down. Food's still going up, rent's going up. Everything's fine as long as you don't need a place to live or you don't need to eat.
My family was out shopping the other day at a grocery store here in Lethbridge, and we saw a roast for $70. Brian, $70 for a roast. And the guy that was beside us looked at the roast and yelled out, "Are you nuts?"
Well, I'm hoping it was enough to feed 3 families, because
Nope.
that is an outrageous price. I was just in the grocery store yesterday, and an item that I don't buy on a weekly basis is just a bottle of honey, just normal Billy B type honey. And it was $13.99 for something that you used to get at a regular price of $9.99. You'd get it on sale once in a while, cheaper than that. That's just in 2 years it's gone up like that, Hal.
That's amazing. Brian, the federal fiscal update was released today, which includes about $15 billion to boost housing supply in the country. Now, you say, however, that this measure really won't help the middle class much.
Yeah, the big problem with the housing crisis is a lot of it is, can a middle class family buy a home anymore? What we have taken for granted for so many decades in this country is that you get a good job, you work hard, you save some money, you can get a down payment and buy a house. Well, just like all the other efforts that the federal government has been putting in, this is aimed at low income, affordable rental housing. Now, that's not to say, that this is not a good program. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we don't know for sure. They're going to put forward $15 billion that developers can borrow from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation at good rates to encourage them to build this type of housing. But that's not the type of housing that people are looking for when, they want a place that they can buy. This is, again, densified urban living, which is fine. That's how I live in downtown Toronto. That's not for everybody. People want a house. They want a little backyard for their kids, for the dog. And once again, this doesn't do that. The federal government is focusing almost exclusively on low income, geared to income, and affordable housing. Again, an important piece of the puzzle, but they're not doing anything that will help your kids or my kids buy that first home.
Yeah, what about for the rest of us? It's the same thing when they were talking about, eliminating the carbon tax, which they went forward with home heating oil. What about the rest of us that use natural gas, right? Yeah, what about the rest of us, Brian? Now, while the Trudeau government says they're working to bring down inflation, it was also revealed that they may add to inflation concerns as they're looking at a tax hike restaurant owners are not happy about.
Yeah, this is the annual escalator tax. So in 2017, they increased the excise tax on beverage alcohol, so all wine, beer, and spirits, by 2%. And then they said, and we'll increase it this way every year tied to the consumer price index or the inflation rate. Well, last year, that was going to mean a 6.3% hike on beer, wine, and spirits. You might remember the radio ads that came out with Bob and Doug McKenzie saying, "Stop hosing us, you hosers." There was a big pushback from the restaurant industry, from brewers and vintners. And, well, just about a week and a half ago, they revealed that it's going to be 4.7% this year, unless, of course, they go in and cap it. That's what they did last year. They said, no, we'll cap it at 2%. They haven't indicated what they're doing with that yet. So if it does go up by 4.7%, Restaurants Canada, other industry groups are warning about job losses, about places closing. It may not sound like much, but we were just talking about the price of food going up.
Yeah.
Well, so you're a restaurant. You're dealing with increased labor costs. You're dealing with the increase in the cost of food, the increase in the cost of utilities and everything else. And then the government comes along, and on the one thing that helps you turn that profit, go from just making it to making a profit, is selling beer, wine, and mixed drinks. They're going to put an almost 5% tax on that. That is inflationary, and that is punishing the hospitality industry. Canadian Chamber of Commerce, just one of many groups, saying, you know what? Stop with the annual increases. Now's not the time.
Brian, the federal court struck down the ban on single-use plastics, calling it overly broad and beyond the government's mandate. So please tell me that means I can finally enjoy my A&W root beer in a plastic straw, no longer a paper straw. Because I'm telling you, those paper straws disintegrate within 30 seconds.
Well, as much as I love A&W, Hal, that's one of the companies that even if the plastic straws were allowed again, I don't think that they would be putting them back in, given how they operate. There's going to be a lot of back and forth on this. Stephen Guilbeault, the environment minister, announced this week that, yeah, they're going to challenge that federal court ruling all the way to the Supreme Court. The federal court said that the ban and how they structured it was overly broad, went beyond their mandate, and so it was struck down. But it hasn't that. The law is still in effect as this process carries out. So, yeah, trying to get those plastic forks when you've got a big outdoor barbecue that you're trying to feed a bunch of people at. No, you're going to be stuck with the little bamboo ones. And yes, you're going to be stuck with the paper straws. Or, my bugaboo now is, as someone who walks all over, I'll walk home after this and I might stop and say, oh, I want to pick something up. Well, there's no bags in the store unless you want to buy your 800th reusable one. So, this is the type of thing that it's an irritant to Canadians. But I don't think that this is going anywhere anytime soon. But I'm with you on the straws.
Our Prime Minister was in San Francisco recently, Brian, for the APEC meeting, and you say it really wasn't a good trip for him. He was snubbed on another meeting, and another political leader actually made fun of his socks?
Yeah, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, one of the most powerful people in the Democratic Party in the United States right now, and a man who, if Joe Biden, there's all this talk of, is Biden fit to run? Well, if Biden doesn't run, if he's somehow removed from the ticket, Gavin Newsom very much might be the next president of the United States, or he might run the next time. So, just to point out that this is a powerful guy, this is an important guy. And California is almost the size of Canada, population and GDP-wise. And this Trudeau sits down with him and immediately starts talking about his socks in front of the cameras. So this is the opening of the meeting. He's like, hey, I think you gave me these Golden Gate Bridge socks. And Newsom says, you're still doing the sock thing? Have you ever been caught in black socks? And he honestly looked perplexed by him. It's not good when people are laughing at you and not with you, Hal.
Yeah.
But on the more serious note, Joe Biden pulled together a number of countries, I think the United States and 12 others, trying to have discussions about counterbalancing against China in the Asia-Pacific region economically. Canada didn't even get invited. We weren't even asked to go to the meeting. The Trudeau government, once again, trying to downplay this. It's not a big deal. Well, we're not invited to that. We're not invited to the call on how to deal with Israel and Hamas. We're not invited to the 3 eyes instead of the 5 eyes on security. We're not invited into the nuclear sub program that the Australians and the Americans and the Brits are involved in. We keep getting excluded. Why? They don't take Justin Trudeau or his socks seriously.
Wow. Brian, amid rampant anti-Semitism on Canadian streets and university and college campuses, along with more reports of increased Islamophobia, the federal government is promising that their online harms bill is still a priority. But let me ask you something. Do they actually have a timeline, and how broad will it be?
They have no timeline, and there's lots of worries about how broad it will be, because they've signaled that they want to go into areas that, quite frankly, I'm worried would, delve into curbing freedom of speech, freedom of expression, to the point where if the government simply doesn't like what you're saying, that they would come after you. Look, we've had the hate preacher, in my view, in Montreal, was calling for Allah to kill all the Zionists. Well, I think that crosses a line. But that was almost a month ago. The guy hasn't been arrested. They say they're investigating. Well, what's to investigate? He posted the video of him saying this in the streets from multiple angles. He recorded it. He posted it. By the way, he says, "Oh no, I wasn't calling for anyone to go and harm anyone. I was calling for God to do it. So that's not incitement to violence." What a bizarre world. So, they can't deal with clear incidents like this, and now they want to expand it. And there is a lot of worry that this is going to go beyond what should be there and start messing up the internet in the way that they have with C11 and C18. So, got to be very careful with this, but they do admit it's complex. They do admit that they're under pressure to do something, but that they have no idea at what point that will be. They promised it in 2019, by the way, and here we are at the end of 2023.
Preston Manning released his report into our province's COVID-19 response recently, and now he's saying that the federal Conservatives should really use the report to attack the record of the Liberal NDP coalition. Now, Brian, you say that's an offer that federal Tory leader Pierre Poilievre should reject, stay away from. Why do you say that?
Because my sense of looking at a few elections that have happened since the end of the pandemic is that people don't want to talk about the pandemic anymore. It was a painful time. It was an awful time. They want to forget that it happened, and they don't want to go back to those days. Danielle Smith, when she was relitigating the pandemic leading up to the election, she was neck and neck with Rachel Notley. When she stopped talking about the pandemic, talked about the economy, talked about other issues that Albertans cared about, she went ahead and she ended up winning the election. Doug Ford here in Ontario, the Liberals and the NDP opposition tried to relitigate the pandemic, and that was more than a year ago. That was June 2022, and people didn't want to hear it. There was a post-election post-mortem, one of these events where the top insiders from all the campaigns came together, and the people representing both the Liberal and the NDP party here said, even our voters recoiled at that. So if Poilievre is going to go near that sort of thing, he's got to be very careful, because while, yeah, there's a base who are agitated, it's a small group, and the people he needs are the people that he's got on side now. 41% in the last three polls? He's got the suburban swing voter mothers coming over. You don't want to scare them away when you're this close to taking power.
Yeah, I pray that we never have to go through a pandemic like that ever again. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.